So welcome along, everyone, to our community call for this week. Again, a bit of a slight change from our usual programming. For those of you who don't recognize my voice, I'm Mav, Rocket Pool's Community and Marketing Manager, and we've got Jasper back, who has agreed to help us out at a slightly earlier than usual time slot. We've got a special guest here, Sam, from Sturdy Finance, and the first half of the call, Jasper will have a chat with Sam about some exciting developments that they have underway and some new opportunities for rETH liquid stakers. Then towards the end, I'll jump back on and we'll have a bit of a brief talk about some of the latest protocol updates. And if you have any questions, I'll be keeping an eye out in Discord, primarily, of course, the trading channel. But as well, you can drop your comments as a reply to this Twitter space. So without further ado, I'll pass off to Jasper to host Sam for the first part of our call.
Thanks, Mav. For those who don't know, I am Jasper the Friendly Ghost. I serve on the Incentive Management Committee for Rocket Pool, which handles where we incentivize our different rETH pools. So, for example, our major one is on Balancer. As such, I have been working closely with the Sturdy team to start a new program and expand rETH utility across the ecosystem. Sturdy Finance is a lending platform focused on leveraged high-yield liquid staking strategies. What we'll be talking about today is their latest addition, which is the rETH Balancer pool, which you can then, through their platform, leverage up to earn a higher yield. So, welcome, Sam. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, and then how you got into Sturdy?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me on. About myself, I've been really interested in cryptography since like high school, and kind of have just like sort of been keeping up to date with crypto through that very casually throughout high school. I started college in 2018, and it was like very kind of at a distance observing things. Then COVID hit. I was at Stanford at the time, left from there, and
I was also at undergrad right when COVID hit, funny enough.
Oh, it's awesome. Yeah, I think there are a lot
of
people
not
in
awesome,
that
but yeah.
situation. Yeah, well, yeah, that's true. But yeah, and maybe as you experienced, not like such a great learning environment, so I kind of decided to leave there and do something else. Experimented with a couple different things, but when DeFi summer picked up, it was just very clear to me that there was a there, and I want to jump into this. Around this time, Anchor was really popping off, and I didn't, like what they were doing with UST or anything like that, but I thought their collateral rehypothecation strategy was really interesting. I don't know if I know you guys remember what Anchor did with their like staked Luna. So yeah, some of it was like, obviously there's like the Ponzi UST part, but they actually had some pretty interesting mechanisms going on with interest-bearing collateral. And so that was initially the impetus for Sturdy, was being able to borrow stable coins against STETH and kind of using that STETH to repay your loan. And it's funny, now we're seeing like a huge resurgence in this. We launched about a year ago. And so, yeah, a year later now we're seeing a lot of demand for that. But in the meantime, I've been exploring leveraged liquid staking quite a bit. So as Jasper, you alluded to, and as we'll probably get into, that's kind of the chief focus that we have now.
Yeah, let's jump a little into the strategy. So from a very high level, the main idea is users can deposit their rETH Balancer LPs as collateral and then borrow ETH against that LP token to then deposit back into the system. Is that right?
Yep, that's exactly right. If you're familiar with the STETH leverage loop or on like Aave, or I think, similarly the rETH on I think also Aave, and similar protocols, it's sort of similar. just with kind of that additional fact that you can use the LP token, which has some additional yield.
So why is that significant? Is that margin of yield, that the fact that the LP token has a few percent higher yield than the base staking token in the context of leverage staking?
Yeah, so one reason being that for lenders, they need a reason to lend that basically beats the watermark, which is now just staking their ETH, right? So you have kind of this rETH base rate, and for a lot of lenders, they're going to ask, okay, why would I ever lend when I could just, stake with Rocket Pool directly, right? And so one thing, and this is a feature of the upcoming proposal, is that as interest rates rise, because we're using this LP token, borrowers will still be able to earn, 10 to 20% on their ETH, but lenders will also be earning more than they would be if they were just staking their ETH with Rocket Pool directly.
That's pretty interesting. Can we talk a little bit about the situation as it stands right now and why this potential change is important? So, looking at Sturdy right now, I believe utilization is sitting above 80%. So, what does that do for the protocol, to the protocol?
Yeah, right now it's at 79.93%. And as you alluded
Someone
to
go
it,
rush, lever up.
yeah, with that 0.07%, at 80%, we have interest rates that get activated. So borrowers start paying a rate. The way it works right now is that as a borrower below 80% utilization, all you do is forego a portion of your yield. Whereas above 80% utilization, now you start paying interest. And so the dynamic that we've seen a lot is that utilization really hovers around that 80% mark. And the result is that there isn't a ton of opportunity for new borrowers to enter profitably, right? Like if you try to enter a new position now, you'll just immediately be losing money. And there's sort of this very strict interest rate above 80%. And so with the new proposal that we just came out with, borrowers will be able to keep 100% of their staking yield, right? So all of that, I think it's about 6% that you're earning right now on Balancer rETH staked through Aura. And instead, you might pay an interest of 4 to 5%, right? So that means at 10x leverage, you're earning 10 to 20% APR. The lender is earning 4% plus, which is really competitive on top of Sturdy rewards. And so we think that this will be much more balanced and will enable new borrowers to enter.
Great. New borrowers would be awesome to enter. What are some risks associated with this strategy? There's a lot going on here for someone that might not be new to DeFi. We have leverage staking of not just a normal asset, but an LP token. So can you break down the various risks in this process?
Yeah, as a borrower, of course, you have the normal smart contract risk. In addition to that, I think there are two that I would flag. Because you're talking about a leveraged position that's against ETH, you don't have any leverage exposure to the price of ETH itself. You have like 1x spot exposure. And so the price of ETH doesn't actually affect the health of your position. What can affect the health of your position is the rETH price relative to ETH, right? So if for some reason, rETH loses its peg or substantially, you could get liquidated, and through the UI, you can manage that. It would take even at like 10x leverage, it's going to take close to 10% deviation to get liquidated. And so, post Chapella, that's pretty unlikely, but still worth considering. So that's one.
Just throwing out that 10% deviation, rETH has never had, to my knowledge, a greater than 3% deviation since launch.
Yeah, no, I've been following it too, and this was something we looked at during the collateral process, and I believe that's right, that there's it's been very kind of tightly bound. So absolutely agree there. And then the second risk I would flag is that you have the risk of Balancer, right? Because it is an LP token from Balancer that's staked in Aura. There's sort of that third party dependency, right? So if something were to happen with Balancer, your position could potentially be at risk. Of course, Balancer, huge protocol, been around a while, super audited, and so that's why it's supported, is because it's low. and I would tend to agree, but just something that's worth keeping in mind.
I have a question about how the yield is processed. So these tokens, these LP tokens, once flash loaned up, are staked through the Aura pool, and then you have a few different streams of revenue coming in. You have the base staking yield, you have the BAL tokens, and you have the Aura tokens. How does Sturdy manage the different income streams?
Yeah, so today the way it works is that as a borrower, if you're the one leveraging up, you're earning all of those except for the Aura rewards, right? So the way we have it set up is that the Aura rewards get harvested and distributed to lenders on the ETH side, so users who are lending ETH. And then as a borrower, you're taking home the staking yield, the swap fee APR, and the BAL rewards. With this new proposal I just mentioned, that should make borrowing much easier and more liquid, earning 100% of those rewards. So you'll be earning the Aura, the BAL, the STE, and the swap fee, 100% of that, but then you'll be paying an interest rate on top. And so the idea is that it will kind of balance out, but still do so in a way that makes it much easier to enter new positions.
So just to clarify, under the new paradigm, this new proposal coming out, the interest fee paid to the lenders is ETH based, right? And then the income streams will be in the the various tokens along with underlying ETH.
Right.
Yeah, just wanted to clarify. So going back just a bit to the security risks, since this is a balancer pool token, is there any problems that can arise with the value of the BPT versus ETH, or is it mainly just dependent on rETH maintaining its peg?
Yeah, it's pretty much just dependent on rETH maintaining its peg because the loan is against ETH. But yeah, that's a nice thing about the stable pools is that it's really just rETH that's the dependency, and I think, as you mentioned, that's historically kept its peg really well.
Is there interest in future markets that you're looking into, other strategies?
Yeah, absolutely. So very interested in other collateral assets. I believe that there is a balancer pool with rETH as well as SFRAX ETH. Yeah, it looks like NWSD ETH that I'm looking at right now. And so that I think is super interesting. And once, SFRAX ETH has a Chainlink Oracle would probably be something that could go through governance. Another thing I'd add, and I don't think we've talked about this too much publicly yet, on a sort of like autopilot structured vault product. Right now, if you lever up on Sturdy, you want to get this 20, 30% leverage staking yield. It's pretty gas intensive. We provide a feature to do it in one click, so it's sort of time-wise very simple, but you might be paying several $100s in gas because it's this recursive looping operation. And it can be expensive to manage, right? If you want to delever, switch to a different collateral asset, and so that can be very difficult. And so what we're doing is creating a structured product where all you do is just deposit ETH or rETH to the vault, and then it automatically does all that for you. So it sort of socializes that cost, and maybe every 24 hours, we'll take everything in the vault, leverage it up, deploy it to the strategy, and then we'll automatically rebalance that over time, right? So let's say interest rates go really high and all of a sudden you're losing money, and we'll automatically delever a portion of that for you. Let's say that all of a sudden Sturdy Governance whitelists a new collateral asset like this rETH SFRAX ETH pool that we just mentioned, and it's a higher yield, it's a more profitable strategy. It will automatically allocate a portion of your funds to that, right? And so it basically will automate this whole process and make it much, much easier for users who want to engage in this leveraged liquid staking strategy.
That's pretty appealing to me. I personally went through the Sturdy process while we were in the governance phase just to get used to the protocol, and the gas fees were unfortunately pretty high. So this roundabout method of socializing the costs would definitely open up the protocol to smaller holders of rETH or other liquid staking tokens. So that's something to definitely look out for.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it will go a long way in terms of making the protocol more accessible. because yeah, as you mentioned, unfortunately, when you're on ETH mainnet and you're dealing with these third-party dependencies, right? There's a staking through balance or an aura. There's just lots of gas costs that stack on top of each other, and so just being able to abstract that all away from a user perspective, I think will be a really big deal.
Definitely agreed. So, on the topic of security, how have audits looked like for Sturdy?
Yeah, so we
have there been
did.
audits?
Yeah, we've done 2 audits through QuantStamp, and then 1 audit through Code Arena, which is an audit contest platform. And we're actually shopping right now for an audit for this kind of autopilot product that I just mentioned. So yeah, it's something we take super seriously. We also have an ongoing bug bounty with Immunify. Yeah, and all of this you can check out in our docs as well if you're interested in reading more.
Sweet. I definitely encourage users to do the research on security risk as well as smart contract risk to the best of their knowledge. We have a question coming in from trading now, which is definitely worth talking about. What are the caps on the current rETH balancer pool on Sturdy? So in the proposal, I believe it was demarcated as 1/3 the current balancer pool TVL, which at the time was around 100 million USD. So approximately 30 million TVL would be the cap. However, that cap is a little deceptive because it's really dependent on the available ETH liquidity to borrow against. So yeah, do you have any comments on the nature of the cap and how TVL might progress moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, what you said is exactly right, that the real kind of dependency there is the liquidity. And that's why I think that this proposal we have coming up is so important. That should increase interest rates for lenders, grow liquidity, and then create a positive flywheel there that will enable more borrowers to come in, and which will in turn grow the number of lenders as well. And then I think the other big portion of this is the structured product to, I think should increase TVL as it makes it more accessible. I think right now users have to kind of price in the cost of gas, and when they're leveraging it, and sort of price in the risk that interest rates go up, and that they'll have to deleverage the position, and so it's a somewhat risky, from a gas perspective, especially if you don't have a ton of capital that you can deploy. And so I think this will really lower that risk by having just a very simple way to enter and exit that position. Oh, it looks like Jasper just messaged me that he got disconnected and is waiting to get re-added. Cool. Well, in the meantime,
Hello.
I'm not sure if the host can let Jasper in.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Oh, Jasper, are you back?
Yeah, sorry about that. I got disconnected there.
Okay, awesome.
Rugged by Elon.
Perfect. That's good.
It's my first time getting rugged by Elon.
No, we had the exact same thing happen, and we weren't able to get reconnected as smoothly. So glad it all worked out.
Yeah. Sorry, could you just replace me? I believe the last question I asked was, we were talking about the caps, and you agreed that liquidity was the main driver, and the new proposal should rectify that situation to some degree. Do you have any idea what kind of APY, obviously this is with many grains of salt, but projected approximation APY for lenders, what kind of rate they might be looking at under the new proposal?
Yeah, we're targeting 4 to 5%, just organic. And then on top of that, you're also earning Sturdy, which is Sturdy's liquid token, or excuse me, Sturdy's token, which is not yet transferable. So there's no price attached to it for now. But yeah, that's kind of the goal, is for users to be able to, for lenders, you're basically earning just from organically the same as you would from staking, more or less. And then on top of that, you're also earning some of this native token as well.
Got it. And do you expect any initial periods of higher demand in which the lending rate might jump higher? If so, what kind of curve are we looking at? Right under the current paradigm, I think at 83% utilization, the lending rate's around 11% or something. How does that compare in the next iteration?
Yeah, so the above the optimal utilization, which might get moved up to 90,
Ooh.
you're going to see the same thing. Where so that alone should free up space. But above the optimal utilization, you're still going to see a pretty steep jump. So if it's at like 93, you would see 11. But below that, it will be much more gradual. So at 80, you might see like 4.5%. And then as you get closer to 90, you would see like 5%. It's sort of the goal is for it to be much more gradual so that there's a kind of a more of an equilibrium can be found, as opposed to what you see now where, you might have long periods where it's just sitting below 80. And so from a borrower, that's great. But then all of a sudden it jumps up to 83. Okay, now you're paying 11%, which is like minus 6%. You're maybe earning 5% or something like that. You're paying 11 minus 6, but that's leveraged, right? So you're bleeding a ton of money really quickly. And so from a user experience perspective, that's just not great that you have these long periods where it's very profitable, but then a short period where it's wildly unprofitable, right? And so part of the aim is to get an equilibrium so that, okay, consistently, that over a very long period of time, that there's kind of this 20% APY, let's say, and that's like just reliable.
Yeah, that makes sense. The more gradualized curve instead of this hard cliff at 80. It's kind of funny in a way that we started this conversation with Anchor UST, which promised 20% yields, and here we are with a potentially sustainable way to get there.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. I never know how to tell that story in a way that like doesn't immediately freak people out. Like, though, it used to be the pitch that we were like, oh, Anchor for Ethereum, like that's a great pitch. And then, obviously it wasn't, just because of everything that they were doing outside of kind of that core interest-bearing mechanic. I think.
I think the fundamental difference here is that with Anchor, the yield wasn't really backed by anything substantive, whereas here you were just building on top of the Ethereum-based staking yield. And that's the key difference. Like Ethereum's yield is backed by block-based demand. Anchor's yield was a lot of nothing. And so we might be at the start of the rebirth of a new LSDFi summer with, I believe, liquid staking strategies on LPs potentially leading the way. There's a lot of potential here for both lenders and borrowers. Do you have any closing comments on the future of Sturdy, or any more bread you want to drop? Because honestly, you've given us quite a bit.
Yeah, man. I'm very excited, as I mentioned, to free up more space to make the protocol more accessible. I think if you're interested in getting involved, definitely jump in the Discord or the governance forums and share your views. Also, if you have more assets that you think would be cool, I mentioned this rETH pool that's with SFrax ETH. Maybe you think that would be cool to lever up with. Definitely always jump in and share your views. And then the only other thing that I would say is that we're starting now to work on Sturdy V2, which we're very excited about. I can't share too much about that, but it should, for protocols like Rocket Pool, it should contain a very easy way for them to instantly bootstrap huge liquid lending pools for their assets. And so one of our goals there is really making it kind of a B2B way accessible for third-party protocols to bootstrap these lending markets with Sturdy. Just very excited about that, and excited to keep pushing with Rocket Pool.
It's been a pleasure to have you, Sam. Thank you for all the great information, and looking forward to the future of Rocket Pool and Sturdy. If you are interested, make sure to check out Sturdy Finance's Twitter or join their Discord.
Sweet. Well, thanks so much for having me, Jasper. It was great chatting.
Yep, cheers. Alrighty.
Take care.
We will now be rejoined shortly by Mav.
Hey, I think I'm back.
Very shortly. Good to have you back.
All right, let's see how long this holds up for.
Yeah, this is probably our most scuffed Twitter space in a bit in terms of technical difficulties. Apologies to the listeners.
Yeah, last week was a little bit difficult as well, especially with the recording. So hopefully this one turns out okay. Of course, these community calls are recorded and uploaded to YouTube later on. So I guess at this point we can switch to chatting about a few of the more recent developments in the world of Rocket Pool. Maybe do you want to start off by chatting about something that went live a few hours ago with
Yeah,
Pancakes?
yeah. So this one's pretty exciting. This is a pretty large new opportunity for lending, or sorry, liquidity providers. If you have rETH and you want to uh, get involved in liquidity, make your rETH active, you can now use it on the PancakeSwap DEX platform to earn some bonus yield in cake rewards. Alternatively, if you are already deep into the PancakeSwap ecosystem, you can go use your cake and stake it in their drip, I believe, to earn some RPL rewards. So this is a collaboration between the Incentive Management Committee and PancakeSwap. We have paid an amount of RPL to be given to Cake LP or Cake stakers in exchange for Cake to be distributed on the rETH LP there. So PancakeSwap is a pretty reputable name in the industry at this point. They originated on Binance Smart Chain, but have since expanded pretty substantially and are now a relatively strong DEX in their own right. So if you are looking for a new yield opportunity, make sure to check it out. As always, yields are highest right when these new opportunities launch, and then will quickly get diluted out. But make sure you do your due diligence on risk analysis beforehand. I believe PancakeSwap is well audited. However, there is always a risk of a smart contract bug.
I remember using them, feels like a lifetime ago. Not quite sure what exactly for, but I think it was before they came across to the world of Ethereum. So messing around with something on another chain that shall not be named.
Was it food coins? Was it dog coins?
Something like that, yeah. Something reputable, I'm sure. But yeah, seems since then they've maybe seen the light somewhat and expanded over here to the world of ETH. So yeah, good to see this collaboration
Yeah.
being coordinated by IMC, and new options and new opportunities, and getting the Rocket Pool name out there as well at the same time is always great to see.
Yeah, this is an interesting one because PancakeSwap represents a different community than we typically target, the hardcore decentralization maxis, but they deserve to have access to the best decentralized token as well. There was another interesting DeFi protocol launch that happened, or sorry, it is not a launch, but a vote just launched about an hour ago. So MakerDAO has a sub DAO thing in their new ecosystem called Spark Protocol, which is a type of lending market instead of a minting apparatus, which is what the MakerDAO main DAO is for, where you can borrow DAI against rETH at a pretty competitive rate. So Spark Protocol is currently doing a governance proposal vote to onboard rETH. So if this passes, you will then be able to borrow DAI against rETH in a new way. This is actually going to get pretty important in the coming months, as there are some major changes going on with MakerDAO. Most notably, they're changing the DAI stability rate and the fee you pay for minting DAI. The minting fee is currently the lowest on the protocol for rETH. It's actually cheaper than just plain ETH. However, the stability fee, as it's known, will be going up across the board by several percent to be more in line with traditional markets. They will also be increasing the DAI stability rate to compensate, so you can deposit your DAI to earn bonus yield. However, this is going to make a lot of unpredictable dynamics in the DAI market.
I also heard there may be some changes to kind of how and which assets they support too, kind of wrapped up in all of this. But good to see that rETH is being recognised as an asset that Maker are continuing to support well. And of course, we saw that kind of hockey stick graph, the growth.
Yeah, for those not familiar, last week, a week or 2 weeks ago, a user came into the Discord and started wondering how much DAI was available. And said user was actually was mistaken because MakerDAO has a weird system where they have a soft cap on the amount of DAI that can be minted that only approaches the hard cap as more DAI is minted. So it gives you a fake cap. And so this user thought that there was only a tiny bit of liquidity available when in reality there were several millions of DAI that could be minted. And it's not clear if it was this user or if it was someone else, but shortly after this user appeared in the Discord and had this clarified, it was all minted. Like 12 million DAI worth was minted and probably used to leverage up, but I am not sure. But that was definitely cool to see.
There's also a bit of a comment from Langers at some point in trading, I assume. I think it was towards the end of the day, and just kind of mentioning about that opportunity being there. And all of a sudden, a few hours later, I think it might have been overnight, the space was gone.
It'll be interesting to see if they decide to increase the cap or not. I did mention it to Monet Supply on Twitter, and they said, I will just go check, that there should be a proposal sometime soon, and that there will be a broader change to how LSD tokens are managed overall. So exciting stuff from all lending markets today, not just sturdy finance, but even Big Daddy Grandpa MakerDAO.
I think that last bit was what I had heard in terms of that change as to how they're managing LSTs. As far as I'm aware, it's can only be good news for Rocket Pool and rETH. Not so sure how it will affect some of the other smaller protocols with newer liquid staking tokens.
Right. Liquid staking tokens were probably the centerpiece of Rune's end game plan for MakerDAO. So it makes sense that they would be pretty keen to focus on high quality liquid stable tokens if that is going to be their core process. It's also worth mentioning that Rune has been a long time Rocket Pool supporter, and the discourse between Rocket Pool and MakerDAO has extended for multiple years at this point, including several conversations about how to improve the ecosystem overall. So MakerDAO and Rocket Pool seem very aligned to me philosophically, and I'm hoping that we see this play out in a practical manner with their new endgame plan.
Speaking of hitting caps, we are doing pretty well over on Aave as well. I saw some chatter on the Bird app recently, and I think it was Mark mentioning that for caps over there, we have to all do our part and annoy, who is it, Chaos Labs and someone else about potentially getting that revised higher.
That's right. I believe he's asking for an essentially doubling of the cap to 40,000 rETH instead of 20,000 rETH.
Oh yeah, Gauntlet Network as well, of
yes,
course. I think it was Whack who was having that chat with Mark. But yeah, fingers crossed, because as we know, the much talked about emo is exciting, but if you're up against the cap, it's of limited use.
What we neglected to mention earlier during the sturdy portion of the call, Sam, if you're still here, feel free to chime in on this, is that most lending loops are pretty negligible on the protocol side of things. They're just sort of dead liquidity. sitting. It's actually negative liquidity because it is sitting doing nothing for other users, but it actually creates risk in that it can be liquidated. Sturdy finance, by leveraging and looping a liquidity pool token, is actually beneficial to the protocol because it's adding liquidity, even though it's also adds some risk of liquidations. So that is just something that's wonderful about Sturdy Finance. And one thing to keep in mind for the Incentive Management Committee as we see these Aave caps lift. If the entirety of the rETH supply somehow ends up in Aave, one, they would be doing a terrible risk management job. Two, it would be very bad for rETH the token, as it could just go to zero in a liquidation cascade. So yeah, Sam, if you're here, any comments on the fact that we are looping a liquidity token rather than just looping a dead asset?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you put it well in terms of the fact that it is like not sort of this degenerate liquidity. It's yeah, as you said, I think it's also important to note that it's very synergistic with the protocol as well. Like normally, when you have these leveraged loops, it creates a lot of downstream liquidation risk for the protocol sometimes, right? Like if it depegs, you can have a liquidation cascade. Whereas because you're using the LP token, it's actually making the protocol's token more liquid, right? And so I think that one thing, as Sturdy's tokenomics evolve, maybe there's like a gauge system in the future, you might see protocols like Rocket Pool that will actually allocate more incentives or bribes towards incentivizing users to provide the LP token on Sturdy because the ROI is so great. You know, with just a 1 to 2% incentive, the borrower is earning an additional 10 to 20% APR, and so that's really compelling. And as I mentioned, is additive because it's actually growing the liquidity for the token at the same time.
Yep, it's a really beautiful coordination there, and I look forward to making sure Rocket Pool can get ahead of that bribing curve.
Yeah, and you know, it's funny. I would say just on that note, I totally forgot to mention this earlier, but just yesterday, a vote passed on Aura for a new gauge for a pool, or excuse me, on Balancer for a gauge with a pool that has rETH and then Sturdy's ETH token. And so the Sturdy ETH, that's just the receipt token you get when you lend ETH to Sturdy. But I think that will be another really cool synergy that, like I said, just passed. So I don't think it's even available on the UI yet. But you'll be able to earn, deposit to this liquidity pool and earn both Sturdy's yield as well as Rocket Pool ETH's yield, which I think should be really cool.
Yeah, that is incredible. Very great way to park your ETH, especially with the interest rate hovering over 80% sometimes currently, but even especially during Sturdy Rate 2 when it's constantly a yield-bearing asset.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Thank you for sticking around and chiming in there. That was awesome.
I see a question came through a little while ago, actually. I think this is for Sam, if you're still around. I don't think we've answered it yet. I couldn't hear you for a brief period earlier, so apologies if it's been covered and I somehow missed out. But the question is the target audience more retail folks or sophisticated traders/farmers?
Yeah, it is a mix. I mean, historically, we've seen both. You can kind of go on DBank and check it out. I'd say we probably lean more towards sophisticated farmers on the leverage side because it is a kind of expensive transaction to enter and exit, whereas the just pure lending is a little bit more accessible because it's not as gas intensive. But as I mentioned, we're hoping to change that so that all users will really be able to easily take advantage of those awesome leveraged liquid staking yields.
I see we have Index Coop in the audience, and that just immediately makes me start wondering, when are we going to see an Index Coop token based off of a Sturdy product? I think that would be pretty cool. Or will Sturdy beat us to it? That would also be awesome. But yeah, back to summarizing what's been new in the protocol. Um, we also saw that Rocketeers, the beloved community-driven NFT project, has been teasing some updates. Matt, you want to talk a little bit about that?
There was a brief impromptu poll in the Discord earlier in trading. It was a day or two ago, I think during the midst of the US long weekend, just seeking some feedback on what is, at this stage, of course, purely theoretical, but these polls don't pop up for no reason, about a potential some kind of new launch of new NFT, or at least kind of a new series to do with the Rocketeers. So I don't think there's a whole lot of information out just yet, at least officially. I don't want to kind of front run and spoil the announcement, but certainly something that you may want to, at the very least, keep an eye out for. So the Rocketeers are, I suppose, the closest thing to an official Rocket Pool NFT without being one. Certainly the people who run and manage the Rocketeers are members of the Rocket Pool community. There's a lot of overlap between the two, and you'll see the profile picture quite frequently in the Rocket Pool Discord. So a very closely aligned and friendly project to Rocket Pool. And there are some of the existing Rocketeers out there for sale if you're interested. It sounds like that this new launch is going to be maybe an even better opportunity to grab a Rocketeer or whatever this new release might look like. So that's just going to be a few days away, and it sounds like there's going to be kind of a launch stream coordinated. I'll be helping out with that on the Rocket Pool side. So yeah, watch this space.
Big shout out to the Rocketeer community. They've definitely been super Rocket Pool aligned, and they just do their best to be like a sub community that doesn't steal from the main community or try to take any legitimacy away, but still does their own thing. I believe Mentor, one of the original founders of Rocketeers, also serves on the GMC, so there is just a huge amount of overlap and good community vibes there. So yeah, make sure you vote on that poll if you hold a Rocketeer. We also saw a little bit of discussion from a group called CoinGuru, and they just posted in the Discord and caused a little bit of confusion. Mav, do you want to give us a little TLDR on what CoinGuru is?
Yeah, fortunately, I was struggling with getting the Twitter Spaces up and running, so I did kind of briefly see that come through. But so I had a chat with these guys not too long ago. It's a protocol who are building a kind of strategy aggregation automation platform to make it easier from the kind of UI UX side to enter into DeFi positions, and especially kind of multiple at the same time, maybe some on mainnet, some on Optimism. I feel like this is an area that's quite lacking in the space. Even for me personally, I wouldn't necessarily say I'm a DeFi power user. I know my way around a lot of these protocols, but even for me, sometimes I have to kind of stop and have a bit of a think about what I'm doing to make sure I've got it all correct. And like any industry, kind of over time, there is a trend to improving this experience, especially if we want to see continued adoption. So, having said all of that, these guys are relatively early stages in their development, and they're wanting a little bit of feedback from people who use liquid staking tokens in DeFi. And of course, where better to come than the Rocket Pool community? As we know, the Rocket Pool community is larger than pretty much every other liquid staking protocol community put together. So if there was anywhere that you wanted to come for a bit of feedback, well, I think they've come to the right place. So I will get this posted up in the ping server in a bit, so people have a quick reference there. But for now, if you scroll up a few pages in trading about an hour or so ago, you'll see their post where they're actually requesting some feedback. So they want to know, I think, essentially what strategies people use and how they kind of make their way around the world of LSD-Fi, and they're willing to pay a small incentive for any assistance that they get. There's some details there in that post. Looking at where gas is at right now, they might just about be able to send that on mainnet and have it make sense. But yeah, the incentive aside, if you want to kind of help out to provide what you may not have thought to be expertise, but would be clearly highly valued by this protocol, check that out.
Yeah, there's definitely a lacking of sort of like the simplification of the more complex DeFi strategies, especially as this multi-chain expansion continues to accelerate. It's hard for devs to keep up the UX, but glad to see teams tackling it. And if you do have time, see if you can get paid and give them some information. Definitely a opportunity that could be worthwhile. Is there anything else major that we are missing recently? Whack Whack Attack has been resuming his standard coverage for the most part. So if you are looking for a very fine overview of what's been up in the Rocket Pool ecosystem, that is definitely the place to go. One thing that he covered recently is an article that came out comparing RP to Lido. And in said article, the conclusion reached was that if users prioritize decentralization and the health of Ethereum, they should choose rETH. What the community responded to that was that they were pretty correct on that point, but they should also be valuing risk. And that is one thing that is often left out of discussions in comparisons between rETH and Steve, wherein the Steve camp will get points taken off for their centralization, but it's not extended to the level of risk. So great to see continued coverage of RP, but would love to see more public discussions about the risks of different LSTs.
I think with this long weekend, I was telling the guys on stand-up yesterday, I was a little bit confused why everything was feeling a little bit quiet. I guess everyone was out. Apparently, grilling is a thing on Memorial Day. I really don't know much about it, to be honest.
That's a very big thing indeed.
But then, yeah, all of a sudden, last night, at least down here, I guess everyone's making up for the short week, and the DMs come flooding in. So we have got, I think, at least one new Twitter space booked into the events section on Discord for 21st of June. That's an interesting one. We've got Hop Protocol mentioned there, so not much more to be said at this stage, but keep an eye out for developments in the world of Hop Protocol. There is a little bit of, I guess, cross-pollination, you could say, between Hop and Rocket Pool. I know that some of the community members in trading are fans, so we have to see what is going on over there. For those of you who don't know, Hop Protocol is a quite a clever bridging solution that helps to make things move a little bit more efficiently and avoid some of the waiting times that you can experience.
I personally am going to be super excited to see rETH on a bridging platform, just so that moving from a layer 2 to layer 1 does not require unstaking. So a lot of, depending on your tax jurisdiction, it might be different to bridge an asset versus having to trade it to ETH and then bridge the ETH and then trade it to rETH. Uh, yes, on a technical level, almost every single bridge and everything you can do in DeFi is a swap. However, until the IRS has figured out actual rules, the most reasonable approach is that a bridge is not an unstake or a taxable event. In my opinion, for my own personal jurisdiction, this is not taxable advice. So yeah, that's why I'm personally excited to see rETH on a bridge. I will say that maybe pretty soon, but yeah. Do we have any bread from the Rocket Pool side? We've been talking a lot about other protocols, but what's the team been up to?
Oh man, Brad, what do I have? I think we might need to save it to the next bi-weekly. We do have another announcement coming up later this week, which I think people will be reasonably excited about. It's kind of serious enough that I'm not even going to start to hint
It's the new
about what it
hires.
is. As far as I'm aware, Langers and Dave are still going through what was quite a large pile of applicants. So I don't think there's been even kind of a first round of interviews scheduled for that yet. But as far as this announcement, I should clarify, when I say serious, it's not in terms of the size, but just in terms of it is, a rather, I guess more towards the professional and kind of more coordinated attempt to announce something. So to respect the other side, I'm not going to give away any crumbs here, but still something to look out for. Yeah, it's good news, Ken. Don't worry.
Good news. Awesome. So we have some announcement. Is that for this week or is that still like up in the air?
The latest I heard overnight was, definitely this week. So a bit of an announcement or a pre-announcement of an announcement there. Sorry, but keep an eye out. And we will do another chit chat on Friday. I'll load that in as an event so people can mark their calendars. Of course, we have the new and improved soundboard to play with, which I'm quite a fan of, and we can still add quite a few more sounds. So happy to take suggestions there.
Awesome. Well, I will be looking forward to this new update, and we'll try to be around for the chit chat as we will just probably be discussing whatever the update is. However,
Yeah, sure.
I believe that.
Otherwise, I think that's all I have. But apart from that, worth noting that the kind of list of protocols who are reaching out and wanting to integrate or collaborate in one way or another is only continuing to grow. So there's still a lot of interest out there, people wanting to build in the liquid staking world, and Rocket Pool continues to be one of the names that they reach out to. So it's keeping me busy for sure.
Keeping the IMC busy too.
Yeah, exactly. It also means that we're likely to have no shortage of guests for these Twitter spaces not quite sure where our streak of having one every week started, but I do faintly recall there was a time when it wasn't guaranteed. So a big change from that. That's for sure.
Yeah, the attention we've gotten lately has really just been up only. My own personal DMs reflect that. The IMC discussion intensity reflects that. Everything reflects that. But yeah, thank you all for coming. On today's call, we were joined by Sam from Sturdy Finance, and we talked all about the really high yield opportunities of leveraging up liquid staking LP tokens. That is, depositing the balancer LP token for rETH and then borrowing ETH against that to fold the process. And this process has been so impactful that it's taken all the liquidity of ETH that they can throw at it, and they are soon to be releasing a new interest curve that should increase the amount of ETH available for borrowing. So once that ETH is available, I highly recommend the yield seekers out there to consider levering up and getting your piece of the pie. There are, of course, a series of smart contract risks associated with this process, as several protocols are involved. However, I encourage you to do your due diligence on research to make sure that you are doing what you can to maximize your risk-adjusted returns. In the second half of today's call, me and Mav discussed some various protocol updates in the community and ecosystem. We talked about the new PancakeSwap incentives that are now live. PancakeSwap is a fairly reputable name now, as they grew out of their shitcoin era, so to speak. If you are an rETH holder looking for a new new LP strategy, this is a pretty good one for you. If you are a cake holder, you can instead stake your cake to earn RPL rewards. We also talked about the new Spark protocol from MakerDAO, who is voting on including rETH as collateral to borrow DAI against. Further, we talked about the Rocketeers and how they are maybe launching new series. Definitely make your opinions heard in the poll on Discord. Beyond that, we also talked about Coingaroo, a group that reached out to Mav to get information about how DeFi users use rETH so that they can design a better app for you. For more, check out Whack Attack's amazing YouTube channel to get in-depth insights on what the Rocket Pool community has been up to. Otherwise, that has been our community call. Thank you all for joining, and I hope to see you next time.
Thanks, Jasper and Sam. We got through, right on the hour. There we go, despite the little technical glitches along the way. So thanks for your patience there, everyone. And reminder, chit chat in Discord coming up in a couple of days. Otherwise, we'll see you next week, and Langers will be back, and we'll be chatting bi-weekly.